Welcome back to our returning attendees who have been following our series since March 11th. It's been great hearing the feedback that we've been receiving, and I think our loyal attendees are really going to enjoy today's presentation. For our first-time attendees, if you like data, you are definitely in the right spot. Also, if you'd like to access our past presentations, let me know in your survey, and I'll be more than happy to provide you with them. This is the latest real-time data that our NetElixir Intelligence Lab has been collecting, and we are very thrilled to share with you all some of the positive updates that we've been seeing. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 5th Retail E-commerce COVID-19 webinar update, The Road to Recovery, Year-over-Year E-commerce Sales on Online Shopper Insights. My name is Heather Dessette, and I'm NetElixir's Event Marketing Manager. Before we dive into the data, I wanted to quickly go through today's agenda and share with you a little bit about who we are. So our first speaker is going to walk you through the data collected from April 19th to May 16th and review the outbreak's impact on shopper behavior in retail e-commerce, share some Google ad and cost per click insights, show you who the new retailer is, and at the end, we'll have the CEO of Micromark, Chaz Fox, share with you valuable lessons on how he was able to adjust to the growing demands and the impactful business decisions that he had to make. So to get started, who is NetElixir? Here at NetElixir, we help retail brands find and engage high-value customers. We do so through an array of our digital marketing solutions that are listed on the next slide. The real-time data in today's presentation is going to be powered by our proprietary tool, Elixir Insights. So if you're interested, feel free to request a demo in your survey to see how today's data was collected. So as you can see, here is the list of our different solutions. And NetElixir is proud to be premier partners with UPS, Google, Microsoft Bing, and Facebook. And then here are some of the amazing clients that we have the privilege of working with. As you can see, their industries vary anywhere from food to fashion. Now, let me introduce to you today's speakers. Since the outbreak, NetElixir has been amazed by the nimbleness demonstrated by retail marketers during the difficult times, and we're happy to welcome one such inspiring retailer to today's Q&A session, Chaz Fox. Chaz Fox is the CEO of Micromark, which is a company that specializes in selling precision power tools and supplies to high-end hobbyists and makers. So welcome, Chaz, to our webinar. To go over the data surrounding the outbreak, I am also pleased to welcome NetElixir's founder and CEO, Udayan Bose. Welcome, Chaz and Udayan, and thank you for joining us today. Before I pass it over to Udayan, I would like to quickly remind everyone that if you have any questions at all during this presentation, feel free to submit your questions via the chat box or by using the Q&A button. If you're more comfortable discussing offline, you can always email us at any time at shareinsights@netelixir.com. or easily submit your questions in the quick survey that will appear on your screen once this presentation concludes. We have allotted plenty of time at the end of the webinar to answer as many questions as we can, so please don't hesitate to submit your questions throughout the presentation. All right, Udayan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Heather. So we'll just get started with just this slide, which I think it's almost like has become the first slide in the last 3 months, all the presentations that we have done. I mean, as we talk about the economy and we talk about the business part, it's very important for us to really realize and understand that this outbreak is first and foremost a human tragedy. I mean, it has really affected hundreds of thousands of people, and with lives at risk, we really hope that the conditions improve quickly. The last couple of weeks, we have seen a little bit of signs of flattening of the curve. It's probably not there yet, but I think there is obviously a hope for a better tomorrow. This outbreak, as we have seen, has really had a massive impact on the global economy, and this presentation essentially is intended to provide the retail industry leaders with a perspective on the evolving situation in the US. It's still evolving, I would think, because we are sort of like to still figure out as to what are the implications for each of our companies' future in terms of marketing programs, in terms of business priorities, the strategies and the plans. The outbreak, as we know, is moving very quickly. And the data that I'm going to share today with you is until the 16th of May. Now, since it is moving very quickly, I already see as some of the data has gotten a little dated. So please bear with us. We are continuing to closely track the category level shopper insights and the e-commerce data. And we continue to really update all of these trends on our blog. I would highly recommend anyone who is interested in data insights and fanatically analytical facts to subscribe to our blog, netelixir.com/blog. Moving on to the quick explanation of the research overview. We have aggregated all the data, online sales metrics for 7 retail categories, and we have taken 7 14-day period. We started quite early in terms of doing these data sharing webinars. The first one started on the 9th of Feb until the 22nd of Feb. And the most recent one, we have considered 2 time periods. It spans roughly about a month since we had our last webinar, which was 23rd of last month, which is very specifically pertaining to the 19th of April to the 16th of May. So roughly about a month, 4 weeks to be precise. We have compared the data on a daily basis and compared 2020, the same dates, to 2019, the same dates as well. And the retail category considered for our research essentially are apparel, home decor, tools and hardware, food, gifting, pet supplies, and home furnishings. For analyzing the online shopper behavior metrics, we have used our proprietary real-time customer analytics platform called NetElixir Insights, as Heather already has mentioned. Any one of you who is interested in just signing up for a demo, I would again sort of recommend doing that through this particular link. You can also access the previous presentations of this series. We have had guest speakers, and today I'm really privileged to have one of our great clients, partners, and most importantly, friend, Chaz, on this call. And he always has been very kind and forthcoming, which is very practical advice, straight from the trenches. So I'm really looking forward to that session after this data sharing part in the beginning. You can access the previous presentation from this link. It's basically an open download. You can just go ahead and check out the videos as well as the PowerPoint presentations. So let me start with e-commerce data and the online shopper insights, the segment 1. And a little bit of a warning, which I always tend to give. I mean, there is a lot of information which is going to be shared over the next, let us say, 30-35 minutes. So if you have any questions, and I'm pretty sure many of you would have many questions, please do not hesitate to post those questions in the Q&A box or even the chat box as well. At the end of the presentation, we will definitely try to address all the questions that have been asked. So overall, this is entirely based on our data set, our analysis. So we are seeing that the online sales across categories are exploding. In fact, the interesting part is food, which really took off from about the 8th of March, that data set. It continues to grow. Of course, in the last 1 month, it has come down a little bit compared to those heady 426% growth year on year and 590%. We saw a lot of panic stocking or panic buying in the first 1 month or so. But of late, I think as the supplies have been a little easier, we have seen that the overall year on year growth come down. But despite coming down, as you can see, it is still 278% higher than last year. The second part, which I really wanted to focus on, if you look at other categories, so this includes gifting, home furnishings, home decor, pet supplies, and hardware and tools, you would see across categories, they are growing by about 100% year on year, at least for the last 2 time periods that we have analyzed, and almost close to 100% the previous one as well. So this incredible, almost like an explosion of online sales, obviously can be tracked back to some fundamental features we thought of get into in this presentation. The third thing, which is something which gives me a tremendous amount of joy, because I know last time I think there was a lot of anxiety, and a lot of you who are apparel retailers have reached out to us saying that what is the future, what is your forecast for the apparel industry. I mean, as you can see, after a lot of negatives, basically degrowth, since the stimulus checks started getting sent out and started getting received by customers, we are finally seeing some light very clearly here as well in this category. This was the sole category in our data set which was lagging compared to last year, and that was also able to make up essentially in the last 2 data sets, and we are seeing some pretty strong growths, 16-17% to about 20% in the most recent time period as well. So overall, all in all, online sales definitely is exploding. Moving on, and this is a new chart that I'm introducing, and we have really utilized the retail trade reports which is released by the government. And you can really access this yourself using this link that I have presented here. If you look at it, this table, let me try to simplify it as much as possible. The first two rows, let us just focus on the first two rows. The first one is the 2020 total electronic shopping. That's what is classified in the government nomenclature, and the mail order houses. So if you look at it, that e-commerce part falls in the first segment. This year, the overall e-commerce sales in the month of January was about $61 billion, $61 billion in the US. And this is again government data. Last year in the month of January, the sales was about $55.5 billion, right? So about a 10% growth in Jan. In the Feb also, we saw about a 10% growth last year versus this year, which amounted to, if you really subtract, $5.4 billion additional sale was done through the online channel. But then really look at the March numbers and then the April numbers. In March, that percentage online growth went up to 16.6% from 9.6%. I mean, given the fluctuations, and specifically it happened around the mid of March to the end of March. So there was a huge rush going in. That really added also, if you subtract 65 billion minus 55 or 56 billion, you would see about $9.5 billion worth of merchandise was sold online, compared to a normal of 5.4, as you can see in February or even January. Right? So $4 billion additional products really got sold by retailers online. And that number came up to $13.3 billion in the month of April. Now, effectively, I think the reason I am showing this is to really try to give you an analogy. So if you look at the overall retail sales, how we purchase things. So we purchase it either on store or online, right? So online until end of last year was about 16% of the total retail sales, which meant that if someone was spending $100, $16 was going through the online channels and $84 were going through the stores. Now, because of the lockdown, I mean, for about a month, a little over a month, stores in most places were closed, or for most categories also were closed. As a result of which, that 84%, a lot of that sales really migrated to online. How much? As you can see in this case, roughly about $4 billion extra in the month of March, and roughly about, if you subtract 13.3 minus, let us say 5.3, roughly about $8 billion extra over and above what typically is the trend for the months of, let us say, Jan, Feb, March, and April. Right? So think of the amount of pressure on the entire e-commerce infrastructure. No wonder we are seeing that typically even a huge player like Amazon, whereby if you are a Prime member, you would sort of get the material delivered or the product delivered within a span of 2 days. In many cases, there were massive delays because of this, right? Now the question is, it's already this. There were fundamental questions: will this last? I think that's something that we're going to address. Also, let us move down the table, and as you can see, total retail sales at the same time has declined as well. If you look at the January retail sales were about $381 billion. It came down to about $311 billion. Right now, this excludes motor vehicles and parts and gasoline stations and all. So this is like the net number as you can get from the government report. Now, as a result of it, the contribution of online has gone up. So online has gone up, while the overall retail sales, as we have seen, has gone down, right? So that, just keep these two things in mind. And as a result of it, the 16% contribution has gone up to 23% almost. Now, the fundamental question is, based on this trace, what is our prediction? So I think it's fairly safe to predict that when this report is again published on the 15th of May, 15th of June, we can fairly safely say that the online sales or the e-commerce sales probably would be somewhere close to almost 25% of the total US retail sales by the end of this quarter. 25% compared to 16% just 4 months back, or 3 months back, or maybe 2 months back, right? So this is an incredible growth which really has been happening online. And because of that, I think what we are experiencing across categories, we work with over 100 retailers at NetElixir, and we are lucky enough to be an extension of their team. We are seeing across categories, the businesses are growing at an abnormal rate, which prompts me to make this rather strong statement. If your e-commerce business is not growing at 100% year on year, you are probably losing market share. Yeah, it's probably the most incredible statement that we can make at any point in time. And of course, there are certain categories like apparel which have started to pick up now. So I would probably remove that. Maybe even the beauty products, they've started to pick up now. So I think there would be exceptions. But otherwise, if you are in home furnishings, if you are in gifting, if you are in pet supplies, consumer electronics, if you are in home decor, tools, across the categories, if your business is not really growing at triple-digit percentages, you probably are actually losing market share, which is an incredible statement to make. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, at any point in time, just pose some questions. And I would, again, in a very professorial mode, request those of you who really are retailers and really sort of are there in midst of all of these incredible times, to ask some questions to yourself, right? So, and the first one is more holistically about the industry, right? The first one is, how much demand can e-commerce retailers really manage without breaking the supply chain and the e-commerce infrastructure? Because just to give you an understanding, we saw in the month of April, the overall increase compared to last year, April 2019, April was about $13.3 billion. I'll give you some benchmarks so that you can understand as to how big of a shift is that. So holidays 2019 were big, they were huge. And December 2019 was the biggest holiday month that has ever been there in terms of e-commerce. Do you know as to how much was the growth in December 2019 compared to December 2018? It was $11 billion. December 2018, the increase versus 2018 was $11 billion. And in the month of April, which is by no means a holiday month, there is no holiday, in fact, in April almost, right? So that we added about 13.3, and in the month of May, we may very well be sort of adding $15 billion compared to what it was last year in the month of May as well. So we are really looking at some abnormal numbers. The question is, I think, does the e-commerce ecosystem have enough resources, technology, and do they really have the right partners to work with, the partner ecosystem to manage this rapid scale up? And when I talk about partners, I'm not talking about only the digital marketing or strategy, but do they have partners in supply chain? Do they have, for example, I think, since we partner with UPS, I mean, we really have been seeing as to how much of an effort, investment, and energy has been invested by UPS to really beef up their ecosystem, right? So, I mean, do you really have even the partner ecosystem to manage this rapid scale up? That's the first question. The second question, again, in the spirit of, let us say, brainstorming prior to the holiday weekend, let me put it out there. The total retail sales decline in March and April. So March was 8.3% and April was 16.8% overall retail sales decline. So if you add these in absolute numbers, was about more than $125 billion. So at some point in time, this is a pent-up demand, because it is not that consumers do not want to spend. There is a pent-up demand. Now the question is, when this pent-up demand really explodes, a huge chunk will go through the online channels. And the fundamental question, if you are an e-commerce retailer, can you participate in this gold rush? And I'm using this with a very, very conscious sort of a thing, that gold rush, right? $125 billion only in 2 months. And then if you add on the May pent-up demand as well, we are really looking at an incredible amount of money flowing through the online channel. Are you really ready for that? The third question is, it probably may be very premature, right? Talking about this in the month of May, but who knows? This time, I think everyone would agree with me when we say that this holiday season is probably going to be unlike any that we have earlier. One thing, I think it's fairly, with a fair amount of confidence, we can say this would be a bigger holiday season ever for e-commerce. Ever by how much percentage, we'll see, but this will be substantially a bigger holiday season. I think there is a question. I just want to quickly pause for a second and just see if I can. So I think there is a comment, there is a question which has been sort of coming in. We see rebounding e-commerce sales right now with the stimulus checks and the customers being at home, but as unemployment increases, etc. Will we start seeing declines in e-commerce? So I think this was the question which was asked. I was sort of presenting the day before yesterday as well. So the fundamental question is, if you think of it, the e-commerce or online was only 16%. It has grown to, still after all this crazy growth, has still not grown to even 23%, right? I'm not saying that the 84% is stopping, but the 84% is definitely going to shrink. Unfortunately, unless and until there is a solution to the pandemic, we will not really have the same level of traffic in store, right? And unless there is a reason, the customers which a retailer or an e-commerce company has really acquired will probably not leave immediately. So if you really combine both of these, the amount of demand and the limited amount of restriction that's there in the physical retail, it's fair to say that the e-commerce will continue to grow. I mean, it's just that it's a, think of two water tanks. One water tank was 5 times or more than that, bigger than the other water tank. That 5 times water tank suddenly shut down. And now it has opened, but it is probably not even half of where it was prior to the pandemic. So if you really look at that analogy, there is bound to be a lot of water which the e-commerce channel really will have to support. So that's, I think, what my answer is. And let me move on to the next slide. So based on this, we wanted to do a forecast as well. So in terms of the forecast, I think we had done, and in the last 2 months, again, we had been proven that we are too conservative. So again, just take it with that spirit, essentially. So this was the actual year-on-year online growth, online orders growth in the month of March, which accelerated across categories. It was only food primarily, which was a substantial growth in the month of March. Apparel was down about 9%. Interestingly, the apparel was down about 5% until the 16th of April. So the second half of April really was so strong that apparel ended the entire month with about a plus 3%, which is, I think, is a very positive sign. But if you look at the other categories, right, gifting went up from 60 to 88. Home furnishings went up to 76%. Home decor went up from 23 to 70. That's an incredible good. Hardware and tools went up from 20% to 107%. These very clearly couldn't have happened organically. So I think the point that I'm trying to make, I think through the prior analogy as well as through this slide, we remain very, very bullish that even in the month of May, these estimates or these forecasts, I think we would be surprised if we are not too conservative, even despite these forecasts being pretty high all around. So now again, albeit take this data with a very clear note that this comprises essentially our data set of e-commerce retailers who are in a certain size range as well. This may not really be entirely representative of the entire ecosystem, but I think it is good enough to be an indicator or indicative of the overall sort of online or e-commerce market as well. So that's what they estimated. So it's a very strong, bullish future that we see for the online commerce. Now, that is being driven, and let me explain as to what are the key drivers as to why exactly we are seeing this. The first one is the strong lift in conversion rates. If you look at it, we just try to give two: food and gourmet and pet supplies. And incidentally, we have these for multiple categories. If your category is not covered, or I'm unable to sort of cover that in detail, you can sort of reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to schedule a separate session with you where we can discuss very specific category level insights. But if you look at the site-wide conversion rate, food, it sort of went up, peaked roughly around the end of April, beginning of May. And then since then, the conversion rate has come down. But when I talk about come down, if you really look at most recently, you would see 5% is still the conversion rate. So that means that out of the 100 people coming to the website, 5 people are purchasing. That number on the same date, essentially, that is around 15th of May, was half that, 2.5% or maybe 3%. So it has come down, the year-on-year growth as a result of it has come down in terms of conversion rate, but still it is quite substantial. Pet supplies, again, you would see a fairly wide range, right? It's just significantly higher compared to last year. The gap has breached, but again, it's sort of pulling away. So I wanted to give some examples of pet supplies, right? So because that's, I think, one of the categories we remain exceptionally bullish about. And what we have tried to do is, this is just representative data. So don't really take the absolute numbers as much, not really have too much of a meaning for this presentation, but look at the percentages. So if you look at the blue bar, that is the number of sessions. Sessions is how many people really go ahead and visit the website, let us say, in a very simplistic sense. And transaction, out of the people who are visiting, how many people are actually purchasing or engaging in a transaction on the website. So as you can see, the March 17th to March 31st to April 1st to April 15th, there was a scale up of 18%. So sessions went up by 18%, while the sales went up by 25%. So that means the conversion rate would have been higher. So lesser increase in the percentage transactions and greater increase in conversions, meaning the conversion rates went up. So if you really look back, you would see again the conversion rate spikes happening around that time, right? So then from the next slot, which was April 1st to 15th to the next slot, the transactions went up by 11.5, while the conversion rates came down. So as a result of which, the conversions went up only by about 5%, and so on and so forth. Then finally, in the last one, it actually has come down compared to what it was in pet supplies. But if you really still note, I mean, I think just indicative numbers, so don't really take it otherwise. But on an average, we can say that for the 15-day period, or let us say 2-week period, 14-day period, it has settled at about 11,000 units or orders, essentially. But that, if you really compare to the pre-pandemic time, I don't have the data for March 1st to 16th out here, but if I had, you would have seen that it was about 7,000. So there is, it is settling down now as the panic buying has really come down, but it is still setting at about 37% higher than the pre-pandemic level, which is, I think, huge, quite substantial. The new shoppers also are taking still less time to make a purchase. So new shoppers, in the sense, someone comes to the website to the time that they make a purchase. That latency is what we call the first visit to the purchase. That is constantly coming down. As you can see, it was for pet supplies roughly about 50 hours between the first time a new visitor came to the website and made a purchase, and it has come down to a little over 30 hours now, about 32 hours, right? Substantial difference. So people are making those buying decisions a lot quicker as well. Which category has been successful in winning new shoppers? Again, this is a fairly wide mix. Let us look into the table. And this is where I think the nomenclature may not be adequately explaining, but let us say hypothetically, for a category like apparel, let us say 70% is existing customer sale revenue and 30% is the new customer sale revenue, right? So just hypothetically, let us talk about it, 70 and 30. 30 new and 70 is existing. Now that essentially came down in terms of new. So the 70 became 67, while the existing sort of went up just because the overall sales were declining. So new customers were coming down. Food and gourmet, if there was 70-30, food, actually the new customer size went up. So 30 became 37, while the existing came down, but the overall pie went up quite substantially as well, right? So I think in terms of the new customer acquisition, we saw more new customers coming in the food segment and the gifting industry. Now, one of the questions which is fairly rational at this point in time is, what percentage of these new customers came because they were shopping in stores, and now that the stores were shut down, they were essentially coming online? So we will sort of address that. I have a chart for that as well later in my presentation. The other interesting observation here was, even though the larger and the mid-sized retailers acquired new shoppers, I think their percentage shopper orders remained more or less flat. So new shoppers accounted for about 1.2% increase essentially, or this thing. But if you look at the small businesses, they were nimble and aggressive with their new customer acquisition, and they were able to see the percentage new shopper orders change by or grow by 8% substantially. So it very clearly showed that if you were aggressive enough, and if you really were really able to sort of catch on with this trend early and jumped on it and be very aggressive, at the end of it, you could really acquire a lot of new customers. That's what I think this really very clearly proves and shows. So some of the questions in terms of new shoppers, I think all of you who are in the e-commerce business, I'm pretty sure your website conversion should have gone up by 20%, right? My question is, are you taking advantage of this opportunity when the conversion rates are still high and really driving your acquisition marketing to win new website customers? The second part question is, what are you doing to engage these new shoppers? Do you really have a plan in place? You don't want the customers to really buy once and then leave, right? So how are you really welcoming these new guests? And I'm using the word shopper as a guest, and then really engaging them so that these guests stay on with you. And the third question is, are you really analyzing the buying patterns? Is it similar to your existing customers? We are seeing that the product mix, which many cases these new customers are buying, is very different compared to what the existing customers' product mix is. Have you done this analysis? And what insights have you really derived from this analysis? And are you really using those insights to change the 4 Ps of marketing, right? The product, price, promotion, and place. So those are some of the questions which I think are going to be very important. In many cases, we are seeing that people are going ahead with the same standard catalog or products to sell without really analyzing the data and looking out as to what actually is the new customer even purchasing. And it's exceptionally important for you, the retailers, to really focus on that, because without that, you probably can be selling X while the customer really wants a Y. So let us focus on the returning users a little bit. I mean, we are seeing that they are visiting and buying a lot more, 76% more. I'll just, in the spirit of time, I'll probably go through this. Again, you can see a similar analysis. I think the returning visitors are sort of buying a lot more, or returning customers, while the new customer also has settled at a 37%, which is combined, both of them is really driving up the overall revenue of the website. Mobile, we are seeing, is driving a lot more sales than ever before, probably because I think we are always on effectively as we are in the remote working environment. This is a chart which I wanted to also share. It's an interesting time, because since we have been tracking the food industry very, very, very closely, we are seeing also that this is essentially the contribution of a very specific days or date sale in the overall contribution for 4 weeks. So if you have the 4 weeks of data, so in this case, let us say basically 1 month of data. So 15th of April till 16th of May, the entire was $100, out of which each day would have, let us say, in this case, 15th of April probably would have had less than $2.8 and so on and so forth, right? So as you can see, the transactions really peaked around the 27th of April. They came down, and again they sort of went up around the 5th of May, but then they have settled down a little bit, right? So I think the food, we can very safely say that crazy panic buying definitely is sort of subsided, and now I think it's a lot more fluid demand. This time becomes even more critical, because you would definitely not want to lose the new customers that you had acquired as the stores really start opening. So something as a piece of recommendation for all of the retailers in food. We also try to take a stab. Now again, this is just an estimate based on our data set, right? So it's probably very limited. We tried to categorize the state openings and the store openings in terms of the states which have reopened, regional openings, and the states which still remain closed for the same time period till 16th of May, about 4 weeks into that. And as you have seen, very interestingly, the states where there was a reopening which happened overall, I think overall the number of users went up 18%, new users still kept going up, and 16%. Right? In terms of regional openings, again, very specifically a region sort of opened up, and there we saw it was like 8%, 7%, and 6%, and so on. Right? So overall, the sessions, the online still seems to have picked up. So that's, I think, one of the points I was trying to make. I think the online momentum is still on. What you would see, though lower, is transactions and revenue. That we believe is through a combination of a couple of factors. One is the urgency in terms of buying has really come down. Secondly, obviously, some of the stores have opened. People are going more back in the stores while maintaining the social distance as well. I see that we have quite a few questions on this slide. I'll definitely address them at the end of it, just to be in the spirit of time as well. So I think one of the things which is something which we found fascinating, in fact, we had Professor Anindya Ghosh from NYU Stern, who presented last week to all of our attendees, and he used this map which was published by the New York Times this month. So how exactly should we as customers or consumers, which businesses should we patronize, let us say, as the states really reopen? Right. So this graph classifies, as you have seen, that number of activities indoors. So for example, like museums is entirely indoors. Sit-down restaurants are entirely indoors. And secondly is the level of contact. Level of contact is more of the density, the people, the level of, as well as the time that you are spending. So there are two things. Density is within per square feet, how many people are there. And the time of contact is how long are you there for, right? So, so essentially this graph shows that the areas or businesses where which are focused more on the indoor activities, let us say like gym, nail salons, and so on, and where the level of contact is higher because the number of people are more, as well as you are spending a higher amount of time, they are the ones which probably people may not, or customers may not really patronize very quickly. On the other hand, if you look at it, bottom left is parks. So parks, there is obviously a lot of space. The level of contact is low, and it is an outdoor activity. So essentially, again, so those are the ones, or even beach, let us say beaches, right? So other than those food stands, I mean, it's fairly okay to go as long as the social distance is maintained and so on. So I think the reason I was mentioning this, the question that we were discussing at NetElixir was that assume that this social distancing is there for some amount of time, let us say a few more months. Is it possible for us to really look at those segments, which is more amount of indoor activity and the level of contact is high, as potential areas of hotbeds of maybe innovation? We firmly believe that this would really create an opportunity for AR, VR innovation along with mobile devices, just because everyone is in mobile all the time, as I mentioned. And I think AR, VR, we should see some amount of innovation happening there. The question is, how as a retailer can you really utilize that? Second is, we believe that they basically takeaways, or I'm talking about specifically the restaurants and so on, and also the home deliveries are a lot more popular these days. That they're probably the ones who are sort of driving these businesses. So can we really look at this service as an experience in a slightly different way, right? And the third part is, we also believe that there is an opportunity for a lot of AI-driven personalization as well. So I think we wouldn't be very surprised at the end of this year, we see some radical innovations coming up in this particular segment, just because the environment has put certain restrictions which really require a certain shift in the consumer behavior. So that's, I think, what we were trying to do. And the question for all of you retailers on this web meeting essentially is, how do you really benefit from that? What exactly do you really plan for your business to really sort of take advantage of this situation? You can, I mean, this is the data that we have been sort of using our platform. So I think at the end of it, you'll be able to do that only if you have a deep understanding of your customer. And we use this tool, NetElixir Insights. I think I've spoken about it in the last 4 or 5 presentations. This is the first time you're seeing a dashboard where, I mean, we are able to sort of categorize the different customers into high value customers, frequent purchases, and so on. So you really know as to what is your best customer and what is not. So I think that's what I wanted to give you a glimpse. But net, I think the point that I'm trying to make through this slide is, do you really know and understand your high value customers well? So I know as to we probably are running a little too late, but I'll just quickly rush through this. It's more of a Google ad investment and cost per click insights before we get on to the Q&A with Chaz. Chaz, I'm very sorry, I'm running 6 minutes late, but I'll try to wrap up really quickly. We are seeing one other interesting trend, since we manage a huge number of Google advertising campaigns and so on. We are seeing that after a rapid year-on-year decrease in CPC, the CPCs for certain categories are slowly moving back up. For example, the food category is something which is prominent. So we had, when I think did this presentation about a month back, I said that the CPCs went down as much as 40% compared to 2019. But now we are seeing that they have moved back up, right? So very clearly, it seems that the marketers, or at least search marketers, and that's where I think search marketing is a tremendous indicator of as to the direction that everyone is moving to. So essentially, the search marketers take about 2 to 4 weeks before deciding how aggressively to go in. I think by having an access to real-time data definitely is an advantage, because even if you are getting an extra week advantage over the others, you are able to drive a substantial number of orders at a much lesser competition, which is a much lesser CPC as well. So that's, I think, one of the points I really wanted to make. And most online marketers who are really relying on this data are, we are seeing them that they are increasing their ad budgets very clearly as well. So I think that is basically my presentation, which I wanted to just summarize with this slide. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to analyze constantly and ask a simple question: what does the new retailer look like? And I'm purposefully sort of mentioned this word new retailer look like, because I think all of us would be in agreement that the pandemic has really changed the retail world forever. And the new retailer, I think, focuses on shopping convenience. So again, are you really utilizing those technologies? Are you really making your web experience is seamless and easy and frictionless. She knows the power of the social economy. Social media is booming. I mean, we shared with you the search facts. I mean, hopefully we'll do a presentation in very soon where we'll show as to how social media has been changing the game completely. Knows the power of the social economy, knows how to create new value. So that's where I can think of those experiment that the example that I gave in terms of the innovation hotspots emerging based on that activity indoors and the level of exposure and so on. She knows her customer very well. That's supremely important because the consumer behavior is changing very quickly. If you do not have the tool or if you do not have the inclination to understand and analyze or the resources to analyze, you definitely are at a disadvantage. So I think knowing your customer, I think, is absolutely essential on an ongoing basis. Has an integrated digital strategy. She should be able to merge everything, right? I mean, starting from AR, VR to the voice to across the channels. Just 2 days back, Facebook came out with their own shopping experiences and all that stuff. So all that stuff would be integrated. So just understanding this digital ecosystem becomes very important. Is socially responsible because we are seeing that's another trend which has really increased. We are seeing consumers preferring to buy from retailers who really stand for a social cause, which I think is a very, very positive shift we are seeing during this time. So while the pandemic is very challenging, I think one of the big positives is it has somehow really brought all of us much closer as human beings. And that is, I think, one of the things which is getting manifested through consumer preferences very clearly for businesses who are more socially responsible. Has very clearly a diverse customer database, a customer base essentially, right? So let me keep moving on. Promotes a healthy lifestyle. I think staying at home, one of the things that there is a lot of articles out there as well. Very clearly, I think healthy lifestyle has become a pretty big focus because we are getting a lot less exercise as we were forced to stay indoors for a very long time and still are probably for most cases. So that's where I think we are seeing a lot of retailers would sort of go that direction. And last but not least is embraces technology-driven innovation, constantly thinking as to how can I really add customer value. So with that, I think I would be happy to address any questions at the end, but I know I've delayed it a lot, but I have tremendous pleasure in welcoming our good client, partner, friend, Chaz. I had requested Chaz that if you can share with all of us some of the lessons that they have learned during these last few months. I think that will be really helpful for a lot of businesses who probably are in the same situation. So with that, let me welcome Chaz to our session today. And I'm sorry for I'm running about 6-7 minutes late in starting this.
No worries. No worries. Pleasure to be here, and I really enjoyed your presentation and thought it was spot on in regard to the way Micromark is seeing things. You know, this has been a very, very interesting time. We were talking about all the changes that were taking place when we last were together in January, and wow, the world has completely changed since then. So it's quite remarkable, you know, what is going on. You know, one of the things that we had to get used to is, you know, wearing masks at work. We found out that, you know, some employees actually look better with a mask than they look without a mask. So, but it is kind of a pain to wear that thing. So Micromark made quite a few adjustments just on the fly because we had to, like many other companies. The numbers that we see that came in, very similar to what you said, our core business during the month of April and May is more than doubled. We can't turn on Amazon all the time because we get too many orders and we can't take care of them. We're seller fulfilled Prime. We can't turn that on because some of the time in transits are jeopardized and we can't get it there for a reasonable price. So all those things, the world is still not even, like, those numbers are amazing, but it's not even I don't think the pipeline's fully open yet either too. So, and then you throw into the count that everyone's supply chain's got to be disrupted. I mean, we're basically operating in holiday times and holiday numbers, but we plan anywhere from 6 months to a year for the holiday. We plan on the buying, we plan on the offerings, we plan on the marketing. we don't have that luxury at this point. We're doing this more on the fly. We're trying to find we're trying to find our supplies where we can. And then Micromark sells a lot of unique things that have components that are made in different places. We do a lot of manufacturing ourselves, and so we're having to look at our supply chain from a number of different places. But the point of that is that, you know, our supply chain is disrupted by somewhere between 20 and 15 and 20%. Our numbers would be even better if we had that supply chain fully in place, and I'm sure a number of e-commerce companies are in the exact same boat. Some of the changes that we had to get used to is you know, obviously working from home. Not 65% of our staff are able to work from home. We converted to an ERP system. Everything's on the cloud. Our call center even has a special phone. They can take calls from home. So all of that technology has been fantastic for us. 4 years ago, we didn't have that. Luckily now we have that in place and we're used to it. Our warehouse, we had to figure out social distancing and proper processes for cleaning and keeping people safe. That meant initially with a skeleton staff. So yes, we did experience an amazing number of new customers, a 35 to 40% increase in new customers. We also saw a spike in existing customer purchases and you know, basically purchasing once a week all of a sudden, because I guess they're sitting at home with very little to do. But the social distancing sort of delayed our order getting out at the beginning, and then the time in transit. Every single service provider, UPS, USPS, FedEx, everyone had delays in time in transit. So you always worry about that customer experience, that first customer experience of all these new customers coming in with delays. But I think there was a sort of a forgiveness thing going on within the industry in general, and people were aware of that as an issue. And so we're seeing a lot of first-time buyers being return customers. And one more thing I'll add, I don't mean to just keep rambling on, but the thing that you mentioned was, what do these customers look like compared to our core customers? So we did dive into that analysis, and there are some subtle differences. I like that it's not that much different. So these customers in general look like our core customers in terms of what categories do they buy. And so it's several categories like power tools and hand tools that were virtually the same compared to old customers and new customers. And then we saw some areas like supplies where paints, where they were buying considerably more paint than our core customers. So a couple of areas that we're still sort of digging into that we saw some changes, but in general, we like the fact that this core customer looks very similar to this new customer looks very similar to our old customer. Another area that we were pleased to see is we dived into a new area of cosplay, people that make really high-end custom costumes for their hobby, and they don these costumes and they go to these events. Like obviously these events are down, but people are still making these costumes, and they're more difficult to reach. It's a new customer category for us, and so we see a lot of new customers in this category. So again, we're very, very pleased with some kind of that data that we've been able to bring in.
Very interesting. So Chaz, in terms of, if you really, let us say, segment out the last 2.5, 3 months, right? It started in the month of March, mid of March. So mid of March to, let us say, mid of May. Any particular changes in terms of consumer behavior or in terms of the overall business plans that you really have to activate and so on? Because I'm pretty sure that initially there was a lot of panic. Probably the panic may not be as much at this point in time and so on. So any changes through these last 2 months that
toward the end. So but the changes are dynamic in that we're constant. To be honest, I don't know how to buy right now. I've never, in my 25 years in e-commerce, I've never been in an as uncertain situation as we are. And yes, I am bullish on holiday being one of the best we've ever seen and those kinds of things. But I also know that there's another side of that coin, maybe a little bit, and that will people have as much money? And so what we're doing is planning as best we can to buy more. We're buying more often, and we're buying more often, but we're doing it in smaller increments over time. So we're really assessing the data as it comes in. What do we do next? What do we do next? And we're spending way more time talking to our supply chain and getting communication within our supply chain than we ever really have, because we see that as as one of the most major problems that any e-commerce company is having to deal with right now. And getting that information is critical for our merchants in terms of what to buy. We're pretty, I think we feel pretty strong about what to buy. We just don't know how much to buy. So that's really the whole thing for us. We're spending a ton of time on that and spending a lot of effort in data diving for that. And where we've realized that in some cases, all of a sudden we can't get certain things from certain places, we're having a third and fourth and fifth backup, and already have those samples in place to make sure that we know what that's going to look like. So the adaptability is the key for our team right now. Being a learning organization, this, to me, what has happened with the pandemic, the change is that it just was a time machine. We were already seeing digital marketing growing much faster than all of retail, and it was already heading in this direction. The pandemic just brought it on more quickly and made those companies that are already good in e-commerce, they had a windfall. And our company has basically a windfall because we're good in e-commerce. And those companies that want to get good in e-commerce and are more traditional retailers, they're scrambling to figure this out. And the digital marketplace is pretty complicated. And so there's a lot of moving levers here, and we're still learning. So adaptability and being able to make changes on the fly is key.
One question, I know this is more about the consumer or the customer as well. So since you have analyzed the new customers, I mean, in terms of, their buying habits, or are they buying more frequently? Have you seen any impact in your return rate? Let us say some customers have bought something, have returned something, and so on. Any such unique those nuances that you have seen, which is different compared to the existing customers?
Return rates are not even there. I mean, we have very, very low return rates anyway, and even with all this onslaught of new customers trying us out, return rates they pretty much match the core business, which is very, very low. We have a couple of products that may have it higher than others, but that seems to be always the case. Some people try things out and return it. That happens here and there. But so I don't see big changes in that, which is positive. You might expect new customers to have a higher return rate. We don't see that. Of course, at the same time, there's some of our competition shut down, and some of the situation is they just really can't get it at a lot of places because it's just not available, and so that might be part of the windfall for us. In customer engagement and letting them know more about the brand of Micromark, engaging them in emails. I guess we do that, and we're really pleased with the way those programs work. The round of honestly, I haven't done the assessment of have these new buyers bought again. That's a thing we should be doing, and what's the recency of our new buyers since they came on board, say in early March, would be a good data point. We love data, and we love to dive into data. There's way more data than time for us as a tiny little company, but and then we're still doing the blocking and tackling of just getting packages out the door on time.
So that's my last question for you would be, essentially, there are obviously a lot of retailers who are joining us today. What would be the key lessons, let us say, that you really want to share with them? What would your advice be to this retailer? Because as we all know, I think Martin Lindstrom sort of puts it very well that events like this are probably like somatic markers. That's what he says. Right? It has an imprint on your mind, and there are lessons learned that you probably will never ever forget in your life.
Yeah.
So are there any lessons that you have sort of, let us say, picked up over the last, let us say, 3 months and so on? And what would your advice be based on those lessons learned to all the retail e-commerce captains who are there on this call?
Yeah, the hardcore Chaz Fox would have put his head down and just grind through this and just do the things that to do. That would have been the way I would have approached things previously, but there were so many changes going on already in this marketplace that you can't put your head down. You have to put your head up. You have to come up for air, and you have to look around for a second I'll give you a great example. So one of our strategies, and we've been doing really well with Amazon, and one of our strategies was for 2020 was to do more FBA, get our products to the Amazon warehouses so that they would be within an hour of 35% of the customers in the US. That seemed like a good plan for us. There wouldn't be any extra labor for our fulfillment center, and we would have inventory within 30 minutes, an hour of many, many customers. Well, when this pandemic hit, Amazon sort of shut down FBA as a source. It was just essential products were being shipped. So a lot of that product was just sitting there, idle inventory, right? So we were a little upset that we had chosen that strategy. Well, all of a sudden UPS comes in with e-fulfillment. E-fulfillment is a similar type idea where you can use other warehouses at different places in the country. You can pick a central location so your products are closer to everyone, or you can pick locations that are metropolitan oriented so you can get products there faster. You can ship your goods out of them, or you can ship Amazon type goods, or even Home Depot or other people's goods from this solution. So being aware of and this solution essentially just popped up. So being aware of all of these different things that are now available from partners like UPS is a thing I wouldn't have normally done, but in this kind of situation, being aware, popping up and seeing all the different possibilities, how to solve some of these problems that happen and occur so quickly, is the advice that I would give to e-commerce people out there.
Fabulous. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chaz. Really, really appreciate you for joining us on the call. Heather, I will just hand it back to you. Any questions, we'll be more than happy to address for Chaz or me.
Thank you so much, Chaz, for the valuable lessons. Those are very valuable insights that you shared, and I'm sure many of our attendees can relate to your experience. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. So while we wait for our attendees to submit your questions, I would like to take this time to personally invite everyone to our Reimagine Tomorrow expert webinar series. Surviving this pandemic requires a razor focus on your business and industry, but also on the various external factors that are likely to have an influence. Our next Reimagine Tomorrow expert webinar series is taking place on June 4th, where Professor Jerry Wynn will present the opportunities in a time of crisis. Professor Jerry Wynn has an extensive marketing experience. He joined the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania in 1967 with a doctorate from Stanford. He is currently the Lauder Professor and the Professor of Marketing, so definitely a series you don't want to miss. You can sign up for this thought-provoking webinar using the link below. It's netelixir.com/experience. If you're interested in a complimentary insights and growth opportunity consultation, go to netelixir.com/growth-insights to schedule your consultation. I would like to remind everyone that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we release the latest retail analysis updates. So stay up to date with NetElixir and go to netelixir.com/blogs to subscribe to our latest retail analysis updates. All right, we're gonna start with some questions. So thank you so much for the people that submitted. The first question we're gonna take comes from Jeff. Jeff wants to know, does the food category include beverages like wine, beer, and sports drinks?
No, in this analysis, we have excluded the wine and the beverages in this one. So this does not include, our data set does not include this.
Yeah, due to time, we're actually going to wrap up, but thank you everyone for joining us today. The survey will appear on your screen once the webinar concludes. I really appreciate your feedback, so if there's any questions that we weren't able to get to, please share your questions on the survey and we'll have an expert reach out to you directly. I just want to thank Chaz and Udayan again today for this presentation, and to all our attendees that were able to join the discussion. I hope everyone stays safe, and I hope everyone has a happy Memorial Day. So take care.
Thank you very much, Chaz. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining in.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Wonderful holiday weekend, everyone. Thanks a lot.